Welcome to Pink Light Podcast. I'm your host, Johnny, and today I'm going to be telling my story. Just before I begin, I want to tell you that none of the experiences I had were under the influence of drugs or alcohol, nor were they dreams, nor were they hypnagogic states. Some of them were witnessed, which is great. It makes me feel a lot more confident about telling my story. I'm not so sure I would. Well, I probably would anyway, but it does help when there's others there sometimes to witness these things, or if you can capture them on film of some kind, just to verify, because they're just so hard to believe. Now, I've got some notes here because I want to try and go in chronological order, and I want to try and give a rough year and age and if I had moved house, which I have in my life several times. So if I have an experience in a different place, I will try and mention that the best I can. Now, I'm going to start at the beginning. I was about 5 or 6, a bit of a scary, dark beginning of my experiences. I used to, when I was trying to go to sleep, constantly feel, when I wasn't looking, anything which was exposed above the blanket, like often, like your feet would be hanging out at the end of the blanket, or your shoulders would be exposed, things like that. I'd feel like a touching like this, especially on my feet and my shoulders. So I had to constantly keep myself wrapped up to try and avoid this tormenting kind of thing, touching, going on. And I had to sleep next to the wall, so at least whatever this was behind this activity couldn't come from one side, it could only come from the other side. And this went on for decades, and it was more the fear of it than actually feeling it. And it was, even now, I'm 51 now, and it took a long time for it to be an overactive imagination. I find that kind of hard to believe. My theory on it is it was something maybe like what I call a black ghost, which is something which feeds off fear and almost like fed off my fear and like tormented me. That's my theory. I've got no proof of that. I never saw what was behind what was doing that, touching my feet and my shoulders and things like that. I don't know, but it was scary, and it's even still now and then. I have to put the blanket right up to my neck so I don't cover my feet, even now all these years later. But it's a lot easier now than it used to be. But that's where my experience start. Kind of a spooky, scary beginning. In the same house, about the same age, a different kind of experience. I was looking over at the wall. I don't know if it was an external wall, because I started to hear like this. Now it's a bit embarrassing, but I have to do it because it's an important part of the experience. It was like this gradual humming. Now I'm going to try and recreate it. It was going and it got louder and louder and louder, and to the point where it felt a massive fear came over me as this droning, humming sound was getting louder and louder, coming from over the area of this wall. And I ran downstairs. I opened up the the living room door. Sorry, I opened up the living room door, and over to the left was my mother and father sat on the settee watching TV, which was on the right, and didn't even look at me. they just looked over almost in like a trance, and didn't acknowledge me at all, apart from saying the words, "Go back to bed, Johnny," which I was just stunned because, I'm a child in fear, I want help. And they just said, "Go back to bed, Johnny." And that was it. Almost, it was very strange. It was almost as strange as the humming, droning noise in the bedroom. The fact that my mum and dad didn't even look at me and they were just like in a trance, like steak watching TV. It was very strange. And I went back to bed and the noise had gone. Thank God. So that was the experiences in that house, which were quite dark and scary. Now I go on to another house which I moved to. I was about 8 years old. Now you may find, well, why am I mentioning this? It seems like an everyday thing. It's because it relates to something which happened many, many years later. So basically, me and my friends, we used to talk for some strange reason. You know what kids are like. We used to talk about albinos and how strange it would be to see one. None of us ever saw one. I mean, but it was on our minds at the time. And one time when I was walking down the street in my area where I lived, I saw a very, very good-looking, tall, blonde-haired man with long blonde hair down to his shoulders. Perfect looking. It was like physique was perfect. His facial structure was perfect. His hair looked perfect. The only thing is he had glasses on. Now they were the sort of glasses you would wear if you were blind, or maybe if you was an albino, which is why I mentioned that before. Because the thought at that time, when I was that age, was, it must be an albino. That's why he's got those, thick glasses on, sunglasses on to protect his eyes. But the other strange thing about this was, obviously I was in kind of an excited state, seeing something which I'm going to tell my friends later, I've seen an albino, sort of excited. And as I was thinking this and looking at this man, the very, very strong feeling I got was of almost like of disgust, like, why are you so out of control? Why are you so emotional? How primitive, how almost disgusting. He was almost like disgusted with my emotions being out of control. That was a real strong feeling I got from him, was of like disgust. Not disgust of how I looked or anything like that, but just it was almost like a disgust of my excitement. Very strange. And it is relevant because something happens much later in my story, which we'll get to. Now, that's the only experience I remember from that house. I moved again to another house where nothing happened. I was only there for 9 months. And then I moved to another house in about 1985, something like that. So I was about 10. And in this house, I stayed until I was 20. So from 10 years old to 20 years old, I stayed in this house, and a lot of things happened while I was there. And I'm going to start at what I think is chronological order, but I'm not 100% sure with these first two. The first one was very strange. I used to hear at night, we used to have outside my bedroom window like a flat roof, which the kitchen was part of that room, and that was the roof of the kitchen. And it had like stones, like gravel on it. So if you walked on it, it would make a crunching noise. Now, before this event, I just thought it was cats, because my cats used to come up on the window, jump off that roof onto the window. It was like a small jump. A cat could do it quite easily, and I could let him in and it could come in. One night I was looking over at this window, my bedroom window, and it didn't have nets. It was just glass and then a curtain. So if anything was outside, it would cast a shadow very easily because it's just glass and a curtain. And I looked, and I was in total terror when I noticed what looked like, I doubt if all of you have seen the film Labyrinth. There's a short little like troll being called, I think its name's Gerard. It's got a very fat head, like a fat big nose, and a very fat face, and very short. Now this thing had to be short because its head was the only thing which was above the window. And I had been out on that roof many times, messing around as a kid. So I knew that it was no bigger than a 10-year old. And what was its face was strange enough, being very fat, and it had like a boil, like a large thing on its nose, and its nose was very wide and fat, and it had a hat on, which made the experience even stranger. Now the hat is very hard to describe in that I've only ever seen something almost exactly the same once or twice, and that was on documentaries. In South America, it's like a cowboy hat, but it's more rounded, but not like a perfect circle. It's almost like a oval shape. So I had this hat on, and it was looking into my bedroom, and then it looked away, and then it moved off to the side. Now to the right side as I'm looking at it. Now over on the right side was my neighbour's bedroom, and then there's a drop off onto the ground. The same on the left hand side was my sister's bedroom, and then a drop off into the garden. Now I don't remember what happened next. Those memories are absolutely clear. Me seeing the being looking in my bedroom, looking away from my bedroom, then moving off to the side. After that, I have these visions of what I don't want to get into now, because I want to keep this conscious memory only, strictly conscious memory only. I might have another podcast where I go into the visions I've had about expanding on this experience, but not now. I just want to keep strictly to what I call the real verifiable experience as far as I'm concerned, which was just that, which is strange enough. Now the next thing I remember in that house was me and my sister looking out of my mother's bedroom at night at a UFO over a restaurant called Wings. Now it was very strange in that the fact that it was just above the rooftop of Wings. There was a chimney, some smoke coming from the chimney, and then just above that smoke, so very low, was this UFO just hovering there, not moving or anything, it was just hovering there. What was very strange about it was it had like gas or smoke swirling around inside of it, and it was very faintly, that smoke was changing colour, so it was almost multicoloured. And what was even weirder was just off centre was a yellow band of pastel coloured light, a thin band of yellow pastel coloured light, stationary, not moving. And then just off a bit to the side was a red pastel coloured light from top to bottom, like the yellow one. But this one was going around, what appeared to be going around, and then reappearing back in its same position in regular intervals. So just going like that and coming back like that, and coming back like that, and coming back. Me and my sister, we looked at this for quite a long time, just staring at it. And I think then we was thinking about going outside, and either my sister said no, don't go, or I said to her don't go. And then I think we went back upstairs and it was gone. So I was lucky on that time that my sister was with me, and I've asked her many times since the experience, does she remember it? And she does. She might not remember it exactly word for word how I've just explained it, but she remembers generally the experience. So that's that one. Now the next one was in chronological order, I think, I was with my friends. Maybe we were about 12, 13 years old. autumn time. So we had gone to a golf course, and on this, after the golf course had closed, so it's getting a bit dusky, and the leaves had all been raked up into a corner, and we were all jumping off this fence onto this big pile of leaves, being typical boys. And there was me, my cousin, and about 5 other friends. So there's a lot of us, and we're jumping off this fence, having a good time onto this big pile of leaves. And then one of my friends shouted out, "Oh, what's that?" And so he couldn't get our attention for a while, but eventually he did. And when we looked over to what he was looking at, coming out onto the green was what I can only describe as something that looked like a monk, side on to us. So it's in like a robe, a black robe, had a black hood, and its hood was up. But the strange thing was, from the knees down was nothing, and from the wrist down was nothing. But the rest of it appeared solid. It wasn't like transparent or anything like that. It was solid. And it was moving very, very slowly across the golf course as we're looking at it. And all my friends and my cousin ran, bar one friend. They all ran out onto the street, hysterical, because it's really strange. When you see something like that, there's no explanation, so your immediate reaction is like, hysterical. But for some reason, I had the guts to stay there, and one other friend was sort of 50-50, and I said to him, "Oh, Phil," his name was Phil, took one step forward, let's go and see what it is, one step forward, and as I done that, it didn't turn its whole body, it just turned its head towards us, as it's still moving slowly across the green, turned its head towards us, and when I looked inside its hood, all you could see was black, just a blackness. My friend bolted. I wasn't going to stay there on my own, so I bolted as well, and as I ran, I put my head over my shoulder, and as I did, I could see it turn its head back round to its original position, and it was still moving off to wherever it was going. When I got out into the road, some of my friends were crying, hysterical. I was saying, "I want to go home. And anyway, many years later, when I was about 18, I asked my cousin about it, just to verify it. I said, do you remember that experience? And he said yes. So that was good. So that's 2 experiences I had other witnesses with me, which is kind of lucky. I know not everyone does, but those 2, I had others with me who witnessed it, and I verified it later. Now, the next experience is really spooky. I'm a little bit embarrassed to talk about it, but it's all part of the spectrum of my experiences. I was in bed one night, and I suffer a bit with insomnia, so I was just laying there, and all of a sudden I hear this breathing in my room, and it was really loud. It was like deep, heavy breathing like that, continuously. Obviously a man's breathing, very deep, very heavy, very loud. And this was going, and I screamed out for my mum, and I was a teenager at the time, so luckily for me, I suppose, she didn't wake up and come in and say what's going on, because it would have been a bit embarrassing. She didn't. I don't know why, but she must have been in a deep sleep, whatever. And then I think I went back in the bedroom after being a bit hysterical, and it stopped. It was gone. But a scary, brief experience, but worth mentioning. The next one is, which really changed everything for me. I mean, the experiences I already had would probably be enough for a lot of people to think, well, this isn't the reality I thought I was living in, but this one really changed everything for me. It was in 1995, so I was 20, and I think it was May 1995. I was standing at a bus stop waiting to go to work on a night shift. It was still light, and quite a nice day. And waiting at this bus stop, and behind me is a middle-aged couple. They were talking about pub work and stuff. So I think they might have been a landlord and landlady of a pub, something like that. And they were middle-aged behind me, and I'm just standing there waiting for the bus, and I look off into the distance, and I see something black, a black object in the sky flying low. And I think, oh, that plane's flying low. But it was coming in my direction. It become closer and closer. And as it became closer, I thought, that's really strange. That don't look right. And then it comes so close. It was flying quite slow. I don't know, like 10 miles an hour. Just above the rooftop, about 60, 80 meters away. Really, really close. It flew across the road, which I was standing next to. I stepped out onto the road and started looking at this thing. While this was going on, this is worth noting, no traffic was coming either way, and it was very, very quiet. Now, I don't want to, I should, people call it the Oz effect or whatever, I don't know. Could have been just coincidence, but it was very quiet. And the people behind me weren't speaking. I wasn't taking any notice of them. I was just focusing on the object. There was no cars, nothing, no other people, and it was very quiet. This thing come across the road, just above rooftop level, and as it got to the other side of the road, to my right, as I'm looking at it, it tilted up slightly, and underneath was like three semicircles. Solid semicircles, of like plates in a triangle formation underneath. You couldn't see up into it. It was just these protruding semicircle like disc things underneath it. So three of them. It tilted up and then moved away like that, away from me. I moved a little bit more out into the road, and I felt like I wanted to throw a stone at it. That was the thought that was coming in my head, and I was thinking, shall I grab my bag, my work bag, which was on the floor at the time, should I grab that and go and chase it and I thought, well, I don't know, I might look like a madman doing that. I don't know. I didn't. And then this is what was really weird. As I sort of composed myself and stood back in my original position, I didn't really look at the people behind me. I was just like stunned. I was in shock. This was in broad daylight, 60, 80 meters away from me, obviously like nothing in the aircraft encyclopedia, which I was fairly well educated on, as I used to buy aeroplane magazines and I was into astronomy, so I knew a bit about aircraft and balloons and what sort of craft they use in the space programs, things like that. This thing was obviously not anything like that. It was like cone shaped, like this, like the Apollo, about the size of that as well, like about the size of the Apollo capsule, but the roof, the top of it was flatter, and it had these protruding three semicircle things, which when it tilted on its axis, you could see underneath it and see them. But what was kind of odd about it was it had like grooves in it, and they weren't like straight and running parallel. They were like all over the place, like these grooves, very rough looking around the surface of this thing. Obviously I didn't see the other side, I only saw the side what was facing me and the underside when it tilted and moved away. But it was a very strange, like rough looking surface. So like I said, I went back into my original standing position, waiting for the bus. The bus came, got on the bus, and then I started looking at the couple which got on after me, and I'm pretty sure I heard them say they look shocked, and I'm pretty sure I heard them say, I think he thinks the same, or he feels the same. In other words, we're all in like a stunned shock state sort of thing. And that was the end of that. Now, a couple of weeks later, daytime, I'm in my bedroom just chilling out, and I'm looking out on my bedroom window, daytime, and I look up, as I often did, and I could see the same object up in the sky, but much higher. I could see it was the same, looking object, and it just quite slowly, but much higher, went over my area and away. And I just thought, oh, I've seen it again, just adding to my anxiety about the whole thing. And then it got even weirder, because a couple of weeks later I was in my friend's car with my cousin as well, and I looked up through the windshield in the daytime, and again I saw the same object fairly high up in the sky, just about the same speed, moving across the sky. And I said to my friends, oh, it's a kite festival for some strange reason. I said, there's a kite festival on at the moment. And I got some response. Why I said that, I don't know. And I just thought, oh my God, I'm just thinking to myself, what am I going to do with this? Why I didn't say to them, look at that, or I don't know. It's almost like I felt embarrassed. I don't know. It was very strange. Then in August the same year, on a night shift, I went out. I used to smoke at the time, and I went out for a smoke break, and I was on my own. It was a beautiful morning, beautiful summer's morning, pure blue sky, and I'm smoking a cigarette, looking up at the sky like that over my shoulder, thinking, oh, it's so pretty, all blue like that. And I see this brilliant, almost like barium and magnesium spear, about the size of a small car. It was big, it wasn't like what you call an orb. It was big, a big spear of like barium and magnesium, very, very bright. And the only thing I can compare it to is barium and magnesium. It was that brilliant white light, but it was contained within it. And it was coming down slowly, descending towards the rooftop of my factory where I used to work. And then it came down like this, and then moved away like that, very, very slowly off in the direction. And I'd done something really stupid. You're going to laugh when I say this, but I put my hand up like that. I got no reaction, but I felt quite calm. I felt quite chilled. I didn't feel, not like the other one. I felt very sort of anxious and a bit worked up. But this one, I felt quite composed and quite chilled, and quite enjoyed the experience. So off it went. I put my hand up. It didn't stop or react to it in any way. It just carried on doing what it was doing. So 4 sightings, 3 of the same object, 1 of the spear, all in the same year, which obviously from that moment on, it was just like something I couldn't put back into my mind anymore or ignore anymore. It was in my face. They were all daytime sightings. 2 times very, very close, the spear, and the first time in May, very, very close. You can't, it's impossible to ignore. So that was that. Then I moved in 1998, so I was about 23 years old. So I was in a flat at this time, living on my own. And at that time, fuel was quite cheap. I had passed my driving test, and fuel was cheap, so you could go off and drive, and wouldn't really matter. It was so cheap to drive around. So I used to go off at night and just go for drives, put some interesting music on, and just enjoy it. And one time, it was still daytime on this particular drive. It was out in the area of on the way to Andover in Hampshire. So in that direction, in the countryside, there was this village I was going through, and I looked up this road as I'm driving. I'm not driving particularly fast, and I thought, what is that? And it was a lady walking down the road, the street, and behind her was a church at the top end of the street. But the weirdest thing was that she was in 14th century clothing, and at that time they had like those pointed hats. That fashion didn't seem to last for too long. I'm not surprised wearing that kind of a hat. Very pointed hat with like a ribbon off the top. And I thought, how strange, that's really, really, really weird. You know, just to see a single lady walking down the street in my direction, dressed like that. And I turned and carried on driving, and I just thought how very, very weird, that a very strange experience. I had another experience like that sometime later in the year, or maybe in the next year. I was driving to work, and we have in my city at the time, Southampton, a street called Bugle Street, which is an old Tudor street. And at the bottom of this street, there's some old walls. And sitting on this wall as I'm driving past, this is in the city, so you're not driving quickly, was two ladies sort of talking to each other and then looking at me, and talking to each other and looking at me, sort of back and forth. And they were dressed in Tudor clothing, you know, real top to bottom, all Tudor clothing. And it was very strange. I carried on to work, and I thought, how much more strange is this life going to get? Now, you could say they were reenactors, you know, they were performing for some museum event or some event of some kind, so they were dressed like that. That's always possible. You've got to be logical about these things, but it was strange. Next I want to talk about a being I saw 2 times in 1998. Various times in my life I've been into fitness of one kind or another. This particular time I was into running. So I used to go to a forestry commission near where I lived, in this flat. Quite a nice area really. And they had like gravel roads where the forestry commission could get in and out to get the wood and so on. And these are good places to run along. And so I was at a place called Chilworth, and I used to run through there, from there cross country back home. And daytime, obviously, I wouldn't want to be doing this at night. So I'm running along, nice little pace, not sprinting, just jogging. It's just, you know, high heart rate but not too high. And beautiful day, and something caught my eye on the right in my peripheral vision in the wooded area, and I look over to my right and to see what it is, and there was this man-sized, faintly glowing white being, which didn't have any features what I could see. It didn't have any clothes, didn't have any private parts of any kind. It was just in the shape of a man, but glowing white, but not glowing really bright. It was just a faint glow, and it was contained within the being itself. It wasn't like shining, and it's running parallel to me, and I can hear it breaking the twigs as it's doing so. So it's solid, which made the experience even more strange. So I'm running along, this thing is running along with me. I can see the crossroads of these gravel paths coming up ahead, and I'm thinking I'm going to stop in there and I'm going to see what this being does. And it didn't have any hair of any kind, by the way, so no hair, no features, no clothes, but it was solid. So I get to coming up to these crossroads, the being's on my right, running along with me parallel through all these bushes and trees. You know, I see it and I don't, and I see it and I don't. And then off to the left, there's 2 ladies running, doing what I'm doing, keeping fit, you know, running through the Forestry Commission. And I think, this is going to be embarrassing. So I just stop and sort of jog on the spot sort of thing. And they go past, and I look over to my right to see if this being comes out of the wood line onto the gravel path, because it's like a crossroads like this, and these ladies are coming like this along this gravel path, all right, and the being's over to my right, so it should come out of the tree line onto the gravel path where these ladies are running to, but it doesn't. So the ladies are gone, off they trot, and I look back over to my right and I sort of have a look around, and I can't see it anywhere, I can't hear anything. What happened to it, I don't know. So, strange experience. I'm thinking, I really didn't know what to make of it. Now, what makes this really weird is I don't know how much time later, but it was the same year. I was on a night shift, and at that time I was cycling to work again, part of a fitness regime. And I had to go through a park in the dark. I had a headlight, I had lights. I had a headlight and a red light on the back. And I'm going down. I want to go through the centre of the park. Now, to do that in this particular park, you have to go through some they're only for foot traffic. They're not for cycle traffic, but it's night time. No one's going to be walking there. So I'm riding down this very narrow woods on both, trees on both sides of me, foliage, bushes, all sorts on both sides. And I'm cycling down, it's pitch dark, I've got my headlight there so I can see where I'm going. And all of a sudden, this same being, what I saw running parallel to me, well, it looked the same, size of a man, faintly glowing white, no features, no hair, no clothes, comes across the path in front of me, crashes, runs into the bush. You can hear all the bushes and crashing and smashing and breaking, and it was unbelievable. I couldn't believe it, it absolutely terrified me, because I just thought, it was just so strange. And so I put my feet on the pedals, and you can imagine I went as fast as I could through this park to get to work. And that's the last time I ever saw that particular being again, whatever it was, I don't know. But it was solid. It didn't have clothes, it didn't have hair. It glowed white, but it wasn't shining white. Very, very strange, very weird. So like I said, I saw it once in the daytime, once at night time. In fact, the time at night time was more strange, because it was right in front of me. It ran right across the path, right in front of me. And crashing into the bushes and foliage, and breaking twigs and branches, and as it went, off to the right to wherever it was going. And that was that. That period of time in that flat, I then moved to another flat. At this time I was married, and we hadn't long had a child, and I was sneakily smoking at that time. I'd been struggling with nicotine addiction all my life. As some of you might know, nicotine is very, very addictive. So I was having a sneaky cigarette out of the bedroom window, looking up at the sky, just chilling out, smoking a cigarette, and I saw like this cone-shaped black UFO quite high up in the sky, just hovering there, not moving, not doing anything, just stationary up in the sky. Similar size to the one in 1995, but a slightly different shape. And it was just there, it just stayed there, and I was just looking at it. And the weird thing was that I just finished my cigarette and just went back inside the flat. It was just another one of those things. So that was it for that address. And then we bought a house, so we moved again. And this was about 2013, around that time period. So I was about 36, something like that. We went on holiday. We used to go on holiday a lot, because my ex-wife was from Ukraine, and we used to go on holiday there every year, sometimes twice. And we used to go down to Crimea, which is a beautiful place, but it's really, really hot, and not everywhere has aircon. Most places don't, and their beds are ancient, so they have very ancient springy beds down there. So for likes of people from the West, it's hard to sleep because it's so hot and horrible springs in the bed. And so this particular lovely house that we rented for holiday was a lovely old, atmospheric house, very nice, in a place called Chernomorsk. And I'm on this spring bed, and I'm tossing. The springs are digging in my back, and I'm thinking, oh God, it's so hot. I just, and the hall light is on, where the front door is, but there's no light on in the bedroom, but the bedroom door is open. But you could see it's all bright in the hallway there. And so I'm, oh God, I can't sleep. I don't know what to do. It's not like I can turn the TV on because everyone's sleeping. My ex-wife's sleeping. And then and the guy's standing there. A guy was standing there in the entrance of the bedroom. Now, what's strange about this, and I should have said this first, I saw the same guy, I don't know if it was a day before, 2 days before, in the daytime, as I was just standing waiting for everyone to come out of the house and we were going to go and do something. I saw him sort of scurrying around as if he was indecisive about what he wanted to do or where he was going. He sort of came forward and then he went back, and he kind of looked odd, almost had like almost like he was a bit slow, you know, like had learning difficulties. He had that kind of aura about him. And anyway, at that time I thought nothing of it, apart from he looked a bit strange, a bit odd, and he was acting a bit weird. But when he was standing in the bedroom entrance, it was a different thing, because I got terrified. I really panicked. And as I'm looking at him, he wasn't transparent, it wasn't ghost-like, it was a man standing there, the same man I saw 2 days before, the same guy, standing there in the entrance. And then it got even weirder, because he came waddling into the bedroom like a duck. He was like waddling into the room. I screamed out hysterically, absolutely, my heart rate must have been like 180. I was just total panic. I screamed out. He came waddling into the room and then just disappeared. Just was gone. As he was halfway in the room, he was gone. He wasn't there anymore. Looked over, he was gone. My ex-wife woke up. She said, "Oh, what's going on? What's going on?" And I think I said, I tried to cover it up. Like I said, I had a bad dream or something like that, because it was embarrassing. I was screaming like a baby, and I was really in a panic. So where this gets really weird is I see this guy again. A couple of days later, me, my father-in-law and his friend had gone to a nightclub, come back from the nightclub like 2 o'clock in the morning, something like that, parked up next to the house. His headlights were still on. I get out, because he's going to have to open up the door, the parking side where the house is. And this guy comes out of the darkness, the same guy. He comes over to the headlights. This is 2 o'clock in the morning. He comes over to the headlights. He crouches down by the headlight, looks at what appears to be a watch, and says in Russian, "What's the time?" Gets up and then goes off back into the darkness. And I'm in darkness. There wasn't any street lights there. Off he goes into the darkness. And I just thought, oh my God, I see the same guy again. What is this? I said nothing to him. I was just stunned. There's a guy coming out into the darkness, comes over to the car, says, "What's the time?" and then buggers back off into the darkness again. I mean, what are you going to do? What are you going to say? It's just bizarre. So I saw that same guy 3 times. One time inside the house, like I said. Very, very strange. I don't know what to make of it. Why he would come waddling in as well into the bedroom. Why have that waddling action, It was really strange. So, not sure if it was the next year or a couple of years later. Back again in Crimea on holiday, but to a different place called Novosvit. A lovely, lovely place, much smaller than the Chernomorsk, really pretty, very mountainous. We rented out this little house, 2 bedrooms basically, and some other bits and bobs, and very, very hot. My daughter's on a camp bed, and me and my ex-wife were in a single bed, and it's hot as hell and it's uncomfortable, and I'm having trouble, just dealing with the heat and everything. And I look up and over to my left, and there's a man standing there, what I thought was a man. And the weird thing is he was standing where my daughter's camp bed would be. And I thought, I'm looking at this guy, but obviously my first thing was, who the hell's this, in the room? But when I start having a panic, my heart rate's pounding and racing, and I start getting out of breath, and I'm panicking, and I'm looking, I don't know what to do, and he's just staring at me, a total blank face. He was about, normal height, but he had blonde hair down to his shoulders, very straight and blonde, and he had like a bandana around like that, and his eyes, which really caught my attention, because obviously what it's like, you're always looking at people's eyes, especially in situations of fear, fear. And his eyes were very wide set, but his face was very perfect. He looked absolutely perfect, but the wide set eyes, and he was just staring at me. And I'm panicking, and I'm getting out of breath, and my heart's pounding and racing, and I'm looking at him, and the overwhelming feeling I got from him was, calm down. Just calm down. Stop being almost again that disgust thing, which I talked about earlier when I was 8 years old, and I saw the blonde-haired guy with the dark glasses walking down the street, and I had that feeling of disgust, of why am I getting so out of control emotionally. I had that same feeling again, but obviously this guy's right in front of me, and the overwhelming feeling was just calm down, don't be so out of control. It's kind of like he almost like, it's like he almost like when you look at a dog and you look at it as to say, why are you doing that? Why are you acting so foolishly? Just calm down. It was like that feeling of a superior being looking at you of like disgust and saying, why don't you just calm down? And so for some reason I managed to gather myself. I managed to control myself. Maybe it was because of all the experiences what had gone before, and maybe it was just overwhelming impressions I was getting from this being, of that feeling of, you should calm down. And as I'm calming down, I managed to start breathing normally. I'm just looking at him. I'm just calming down. I'm calming down. I almost get to a normalish state, and as I do, he just fades out and he's gone. And the feeling I got from that was almost like, well done. You achieved something by being what they perceive to be normal, which is like a steady emotional state. The overwhelming feeling I got from these two blonde-haired guys, whatever they are, was that we need to be more emotionally stable and not get so out of control and impulsive. That's my takeaway from it. But it was a scary experience. So then I got divorced, unfortunately, after 19 years, and I moved house. Just me and my daughter moved into another house. And while I was there, I'm not going to say anything happened, because there was an event, but I was drinking alcohol at the time, so I don't want to include that. So I'm going to skip that one. So let's just say nothing happened there. Then my daughter moved out, and I done something quite radical. I moved to Wales, which is where I am now, and now I'm 51. And I had my last experience, which was a couple of weeks from this recording. I was just daytime. I was just going to the post office to post a parcel, and I was just looking at the beautiful mountains here, which are forested, and beautiful blue sky day, and there was this spear of light or orb off in the distance. Now I stop and I look at it, and I'm thinking, should I get my phone out? And like an idiot, I waited too long, because what I was thinking, it could be just a balloon drifting over the trees, because it was above the tree tops, but it was a lot closer. But it changed direction, and when it done that, I knew it wasn't a balloon. Then I quickly got my phone out, but by the time I was in position, got the camera app open and pointed it, and steadied myself and took the pictures, it had moved off over the top of the mountain above, far further away from me. If I would have taken an image when I first saw it and then zoomed in, it may have got a bit more detail. But that's the last and only experience I've had here. I've been here for a year now. That's the only experience I've had here, just at Orb, in the daytime there. Wish I would have got an image of it quicker. It's on the YouTube channel. It's not much to look at, because like I said, I took it too late, but it's there if you want to have a look. So that's my story so far. More than likely there'll be more, I would have thought, at some point, and there might be nothing. Sometimes there can be years and years apart, these things. There doesn't seem to be a pattern, what I can see. There doesn't seem to be a reason. They almost seem indifferent. But why would these things show up so much, and other people see nothing all their whole entire life? I don't know. That's the reason why I started the channel, is to get other people to come forward, and we can compare our stories and talk with each other, and try and get some meaning, and also support each other, because I know from my own experience these things can be very, very hard to deal with. They're difficult things to deal with, and the ghost-like side of things are very tormenting and scary, and almost seem evil, and they are like a tormenting kind of force. The UAP stuff, the other beings seem just indifferent, but show up. Why, I don't know. The time thing, if that's what it was, with the Tudor ladies and the 1400s lady with the pointed hat, I saw, whether that's a time slip or something, I don't know. But quite often you'll hear of experiences having time slips of one kind or another. There is a lot of overlay with this stuff. Quite often when people have experiences with UAP, they have experiences with time slips, and they have experiences with poltergeists or ghosts. I never had really any poltergeist activity. I'm quite glad, really, because again, that's kind of tormenting, isn't it? It's not nice. But I did explain in episode 3 a way in how to deal with that sort of thing. So do give that a try if you're dealing with anything like that, because I believe it'd definitely help, if not get rid of it. As far as the UAP thing it goes, unfortunately there's no running away. There's no way of dealing with it apart from try and keep logical, try and keep your feet grounded. And I think after all these years, we need to try and open up a bit and speak to others about it. And I still am quite secretive about my experiences. There's only certain people I'll share it with. Sometimes I'll just blab. It's hard sometimes to keep it in, especially when you're in like a social circle. Sometimes it just comes out, you can't help it, It's a bit like finding something strange, you just think, oh no, you want to share it with someone, and it just comes out. But try and get in touch with me. Try and send me an email at pinklightpodcast@outlook.com, and try and come on the podcast and share your story. You don't have to be alone with this. It's not necessarily negative or bad. It's just very strange. It really is a puzzle. It's a really, really strange puzzle, the weirdest puzzle of all, in my opinion. And like I said, and I think it was episode 1, I'm really bad at puzzles, so I could do with you jumping in and helping out a bit. And like I said, if you need some support, ask for it. I've got a whole lifetime of experience of these things. It's got to count for something. And okay, I hope you at least found it interesting, if not helpful. Bye for now.